Oh, Sarah. Did you get the gift I sent you? The lobster must have been delicious, right? I replied to Karen's words. My eldest son ate it all by himself. What? Karen's voice trembled as she responded, and she suddenly started panicking. Go check on your son, please. I retorted to her frantic request. No way. And dismissed it. However, reluctantly following her advice, I headed towards the bathroom near my eldest son's bedroom and witnessed an unbelievable scene. My name is Sarah. I'm turning 60 this year. I married my husband at 19 and was blessed with 3 children. At 20, I had my eldest son, Mike, and at 23, I gave birth to twin daughters, Betty and Emma. Now, all 3 are married. My eldest daughter lives far away in Spain. It was lonely when she left, but my younger daughter moved to the next town after getting married and now lives in an apartment near her in-laws. And my eldest son's family has been living with us. It's a blessing to have 2 of them nearby. In this rural area, it's common for families to live with their eldest son, and multi-generational households aren't rare. The tradition of passing down the family home to the eldest son is still strong here. Naturally, we plan to hand our house over to our eldest son. My husband owns several properties. So, we have a decent passive income. Yet, we live modestly and happily. We don't indulge in luxuries, but we can afford gifts for our grandchildren. Especially for my eldest daughter, who I can't see often, I regularly send gifts, which she always appreciates. She had a boy and a girl a few years ago. Though we can't see each other often, the grandchildren always call us via video chat to thank us for the gifts. That's one of my joys. My younger daughter has a big family with 3 boys and a girl. She works, but her eldest recently started playing soccer, so she seems particularly busy. Sometimes, we take care of her children at our house. And my eldest son and his wife have a boy. They live with us, but he doesn't talk to me much lately, maybe because he's in his rebellious phase. However, having many grandchildren and seeing them all healthy and well is my happiness. But living together brings its own set of problems. In the past, a mother-in-law's word was law, and I never dared to defy mine. She was strict. I don't want to be like that, but there are things I must teach. Living here in the countryside, there's a minimum level of community and family interaction that my eldest son needs to know, or he'll struggle. That's why I asked Karen, my daughter-in-law, to help with things like arranging Christmas cards and gifts for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Since we own properties and my eldest son is set to inherit them, these relationships are very important. I often tell him this. However, he responds with, "You're so annoying, leave me alone," and seems to dislike me and my husband, who supports me. And when I talk to Karen, she doesn't want to help either. Come Thanksgiving, she'd say she's traveling with friends and leave the house, and for Christmas, she'd go to her parents' house from mid-November through the New Year's holidays. I never tell her not to go. In fact, I think she should visit her parents. But such a long holiday break is unheard of. And Karen's parents live in the same city, just in a neighboring school district. They could meet anytime, not just during the holidays. So, while I'm dissatisfied with her long visits home, I end up doing the end-of-year cleaning of our large house all by myself. Seeing my struggle, my younger daughter and her children started helping out a few years ago, which has been a relief, but I really think it's Karen's responsibility, as she lives here. I've mentioned it to my eldest son, but he doesn't seem to say anything to Karen. And my son, busy with work, doesn't bother to help either. Contrastingly, my younger daughter helps with arranging presents and making Christmas cards even on her precious days off. She's truly a godsend. I've had my reservations about Karen's behavior in everyday life. She's a stay-at-home mom and is home every day. She does drive the grandkids to and from school and tutoring, but she doesn't do housework. She barely manages the laundry, but only their own clothes, never touching ours. I've compromised, thinking it's okay as long as they handle their own laundry. After all, family or not, there's still other people. I thought it would be great if we could just do it for ourselves. However, she'll say, "Sarah, I'm leaving the laundry here," dumping muddy clothes or items needing hand washing into our basket, as if expecting me to do it. I recall since the grandkids were babies, I've been the one washing anything stained or needing hand washing. It didn't bother me before, but should I always be the one to do it? I once confronted her. "Karen, wash your son's dirty clothes yourself, don't just put them in our laundry basket." Her response was exaggerated. "Of course, I'll do it when I can. But a little help would be nice, wouldn't it?" I was taken aback by her words. I wanted to throw those words right back at her. I'm the one who wants family cooperation. There have been many such incidents. Her attitude, the local customs, the long-standing traditions. I think they're the cause, and I understand why she might dislike them. Being family doesn't mean you don't need to be considerate. That's why I've always tried to be accommodating towards Karen. I've never forced her to attend gatherings, I've done what I can myself. Karen may be as she is, but there's no doubt she supports my eldest son and is devoted to the grandchild. We've managed to live together for over 10 years by finding a middle ground. And now, we're in December again. Today is my 60th birthday. But there's no celebratory mood, just as busy as every year. Karen went to her parents' house about half a month ago. In the evening, thinking I'd like something nice for my birthday dinner. "I'm home," I heard from the entrance. "Oh, Mike. You're early." It was my eldest son. He seems to have finished work early today. He handed me a large package. "Here, for your 60th celebration." The bag was from a department store. I was surprised. Usually, my husband doesn't even respond properly when I talk to him. Even now, not a word of happy birthday, but the fact that he thought to celebrate touched me. "Thank you, I'm so happy." My son gruffly said he'd change and left. My husband peeked in. "What's that?" "Just something." I went back to the dining room and opened it. But the moment I saw what was inside, I froze. "Quite a fancy lobster," my husband said with a wry smile. He knows I have a shellfish allergy. Although it's not severe. Just some itching if I eat it. My eldest son should know too, but it's no issue for cooking. After all, he's always loved lobster, so it's often been on our table. I only avoid eating it, so maybe he forgot. I felt a bit disappointed, but mostly I was happy. With that in mind, I set the lobster on the table, which instantly looked lavish, and just made a simple meal with some frozen mackerel I had. My eldest son came back after showering. My husband then headed to the bathroom. "Such a magnificent lobster." "Thank you." I called out to my son from the kitchen. "Yeah," he replied shortly, then looked away and sat down at the dining chair. "Let's all eat together." My son started eating without responding. He's always been gruff and quiet. But it seems to have gotten worse since he got married. Maybe he doesn't like how I talk to Karen. So, I've been keeping my distance from him lately. But seeing his eyes light up at the sight of the lobster was just like when he was a child. I was happy, hoping for a family meal just between us today. My husband returned, and both of us sat down at the table. However, I was surprised when I saw the table. But I was shocked to see the lobster was just a shell. "Where's the lobster?" I asked my son. "I ate it." "You're allergic, Mom," he said nonchalantly. Stunned, my husband spoke for me. "What do you mean?" You sent her lobster knowing she can't eat it? It's better than nothing, right? My son didn't seem remorseful. Feeling pathetic for being happy and saddened by my son's actions, I quietly finished my meal and retreated to my room. What's the big deal? Turning 60 isn't special. If I can enjoy it, that's all that matters. My son said dismissively, and my husband scolded him. After calming down, I came out of my room. My husband and son were still in a tense mood. I'll thank Karen for you. She prepared it, after all. My son told me amid the tension. Why should Sarah thank Karen? My husband yelled. Enough, Henry. It's my fault for being happy about it. My son, showing anger, left the dining room. Feeling sorry for my husband, who looked at me with pity, I silently started cleaning up. Then I showered and went to the bedroom alone, leaving my husband behind. Entering the bedroom, I saw a missed call on my phone. It was Karen. It was late. But maybe she needed something, so I called her back. Hello, Karen? Ah, Sarah. Did you get the gift? Yes. I responded briefly to her question. Was the lobster delicious? I replied to Karen. The thing is, I have a mild allergy to shellfish. Mike ate it all by himself. What? Karen's voice trembled in response, and she suddenly sounded panicked. Mike? Where's he now? I don't know. Maybe in his room? It's been quite a situation. When I said that, she sounded distraught. Please go check on him. I won't. I refused. He'll come out if he feels remorseful. It's not about that. Karen sounded frantic. I asked in response to the visibly panicked state. What's going on? Why are you in such a hurry? Just go quickly. Reluctantly, I went to my eldest son and his wife's bedroom. It had been quite a while since my eldest son went to bed. I assumed he would be asleep by now, but I knocked and called out. Mike? Are you sleeping? There was no answer. Seems he's asleep. I spoke to Karen, who was on the other end of the phone call. I'll be right back, Karen said before hanging up. What was that about? I was about to return to the bedroom when it happened. Mom! A pained voice called out, making me look up. Mike? The voice was coming from the bathroom at the back of the second floor. The door was wide open, and I could see half of Mike's figure. What's wrong? I couldn't help but raise my voice. Call an ambulance. Hearing my eldest son's pained voice, I called my husband and immediately phoned for an ambulance. I felt responsible. Honestly, that's what I thought. He must have caused himself gastroenteritis from overeating. After eating lobster, he had finished all the rice even after I left the room. I got into the ambulance with him, and my husband followed in the car. It was night, but they examined him right away. I got a call from Karen, and when I told her we were heading to the hospital in an ambulance, she hurried over. Mike! She called out our son's name as she burst into his hospital room. For now, he was on an 4-drip, going back and forth between the toilet and bed, but the doctor said his symptoms should settle down with time. I left our son in Karen's care and returned home with my husband. It's overeating. His own fault, Henry said, echoing my thoughts. With Karen by our son's side, there seemed to be no need to worry. We rested easy that day and went to the hospital again the next day. Food poisoning? The next day, the doctor informed my husband and me of our son's diagnosis. It seemed it wasn't just overeating after all. When asked if anything comes to mind, I said, We did eat mackerel yesterday. Mackerel? It could be anisakaiasis. His symptoms have settled, so we can perform an endoscopy. The doctor suggested. That would be best. We need to know the cause. I agreed. But the mackerel had been frozen and thoroughly cooked. I couldn't imagine it harboring anisakis. As I pondered this, the doctor explained the situation to my son. My son agreed to the endoscopy and changed into the examination gown provided by the nurse. The hospital room was now just me, my husband, my son, and my grandson Tom. Today happened to be a Saturday. My grandson, who was off from school, had come from Karen's parents' house early this morning. It's all because of the meal Mom made, my son said, glaring at me. I had no words to return. Though not intentional, I felt responsible. Why are you changing? Karen, who had just returned, asked. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen her for a while. She must have been in the bathroom. I explained what the doctor had told me. What? Is he okay to have an endoscopy when he's feeling sick? Karen voiced her concern. I'm in pain too and would rather not do it, but the symptoms aren't going away. It might be anisakaiasis causing peritonitis. If it gets worse, it could even lead to surgery. And it's all because of Mom. Hearing my eldest son's words, Karen also looked at me. But that mackerel was frozen. Anisakis should be okay if it's frozen, right? And it was well cooked. But look at me now. My son shouted at me angrily. Mom, is what you just said true? The nurse who entered the room asked, opening the door. It was a relief to see her. It was my daughter, Emma. She worked as a nurse in this hospital. We had informed them yesterday that we were Emma's family. Having come to work, Emma must have heard from someone and come to check on us. Good morning. I greeted my daughter. But is it true about the mackerel being frozen? It's true, it was properly frozen. Upon hearing this, Emma hurried out of the room. Shortly after, the doctor returned and asked me for confirmation. Sarah, I heard the mackerel was frozen. Is that true? I nodded at his words. Then the likelihood of anisakis is extremely low. Anisakis are fine if frozen. Eating that wouldn't cause food poisoning. Did you eat anything else that might be of concern? His words made me ponder. I had thought it was all because of the mackerel I cooked. And I thought again. Yesterday, we had mackerel, soup, and sautéed spinach. My husband and I ate it too, but we feel fine. Then I remembered something. Oh, but my son ate lobster alone. I didn't miss the change in Karen's expression at my words. Come to think of it, Karen had been disturbed the moment I mentioned yesterday that my eldest son had eaten lobster. She was the one who had urged me to go to the bedroom in a hurry. Thanks to her, I found my son in bad shape in the bathroom. Karen, do you know something? I asked. She stiffened. Karen? My son also called out to her. Karen fell silent. At that moment, their son, Tom, stopped playing his game and said, Is that the lobster Mom bought a month ago? A month ago? My eldest son, my husband, and I all turned our gaze to our grandson. Yeah, the one I've been keeping in my room for a month. I took it with me when I went back to Grandpa's house yesterday, and I gave it to Dad. At his words, I turned pale. My eldest son also questioned her. What do you mean? Wasn't it bought yesterday? Then she began to speak. So what? You were the one who said you'd send Lobster for her 60th birthday celebration. That's why I bought it when it was cheap. What's wrong with that? Why were you hiding it in Tom's room? My eldest son yelled at Karen. You were the one who said Sarah was being annoying and it was just to irritate her. I thought a little stomach pain would do. I meant I wouldn't eat something I can't because I'm allergic to shellfish, just to spite her by eating it in front of her. Listening to their argument, my husband seemed completely angry. Both of you are to blame. Apologize to Sarah. My husband's yelling echoed in the hospital room. I calmed him down. It was clear that both had acted with malice. We can't keep them in our house anymore, I declared. They stopped their arguing. I'm sorry. I went too far. My eldest son apologized, confused by my calm demeanor. Right. I can't even think of you as my son anymore. Leave the house once you're discharged. My husband added. Please wait. Henry. I'm really sorry. Karen collapsed on the spot. In the end, Mom was fine, so please forgive us. My son said, trying to gauge our reaction. But forgiveness was not in my heart. Take care then. I said only that. And we left the hospital, leaving the two behind. According to my daughter, they continued to blame each other after we left. Mike, Karen, calm down. Emma tried to soothe them, but the fight didn't stop. Emma, can I go home now? Tom, fed up with his parents, had returned to our house first. I hadn't even noticed his return since he went straight to his room. Ultimately, the atmosphere between the two remained hostile even after discharge. Karen stopped washing my son's clothes, and of course, I had no intention of doing it either. Eventually, they got divorced. Karen left our house with Tom. She was a daughter-in-law who often stayed away long and was absent when needed. I had been considerate all this time, but somehow I felt relieved. Let's live together happily like before, my eldest son suggested, but my husband got furious again and finally kicked him out of the house. We transferred the ownership of our properties and house to our eldest and second daughters. Although there was a gift tax, my husband laughed, saying it was better than leaving it to someone we disliked. The husbands of our daughters thanked us, and they redid the celebration for my 60th birthday. At that time, our eldest daughter came back from Spain to our house after several years, and we all had a great time. Seeing our grandchildren's smiling faces, I was truly happy. Later, our second daughter's family moved from their apartment to our house. The apartment was our property, too. We transferred its ownership to her, and it started generating rental income. Our eldest daughter was overjoyed as well, saying that thanks to the property she inherited, the whole family could visit us several times a year. Spending time with our real daughters was effortless and very relaxing. The family grew larger, and my husband seemed happy. Although I sometimes had to be careful around my second daughter's husband, he was a kind man who always looked after us. Honestly, I still can't forgive my eldest son and his ex-daughter-in-law, nor do I intend to in the future. But my eldest daughter taught me something. There's a Spanish proverb, living well is the best revenge. Don't you think it's a good saying? Betty said with a smile. Yes, it is. I smiled back. If there's any revenge to be had, it's for my husband and me to live happily. Hey, housekeeper. I've invited my celebrity friends over, so make them feel welcome. I was told this by my son's wife Linda, and I wondered how to respond. With guests already here, arguing wasn't an option. Thinking this, I remained calm, which seemed to surprise Linda. She probably expected me to retort in some way. Ignoring that, I carried the finished meal to the living room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Rebecca, the housekeeper. I said this with a smile as I entered, but I was shocked to see the faces of the surrounding celebrities. And it wasn't just me who was surprised. The celebrities who saw me started murmuring among themselves. Then, one of them confronted Linda. How come she is the one doing this? I can't believe she's a housekeeper. Linda, what's the meaning of this? 3 minutes later, my son, Anthony's return would cost Linda everything. My name is Rebecca. Last spring, as I turned 65, I retired and am now not working. Having lost my husband early, I raised my eldest son, Anthony, on my own. Anthony, who is now 39, got married 6 months ago. Since then, I've been living comfortably alone in a condominium. Freed from work and family obligations, I thought it was time to enjoy my own life. But reality was not so kind. The problem was my daughter-in-law. Linda, Anthony's wife, is 27, comes from a decently good family. Anthony, who has always been shy, had never dated a woman before. He met Linda at a singles mixer he was invited to by a friend. I'm not well-versed in current marriage customs, but Anthony, who had become an associate professor in his late 30s, attended a party limited to men with an annual income of over $80,000. Therefore, many women there were proactive in approaching men, even those significantly older than themselves. For the shy Anthony, being approached by younger women must have been flattering. But as a mother, I had my reservations about this unnatural way of meeting. Yet, seeing Anthony introduce Linda with a happy face, I couldn't bring myself to show displeasure. With that, I decided to warmly accept Anthony's marriage. However, Linda, raised as a young lady, turned out to be incapable of doing anything. Because of her, I would be severely inconvenienced later on. My headaches over Linda began just before the wedding. It was on the day of a dinner with both families when I found myself alone with her in the restroom. I smiled when our eyes met. However, she had a mean smirk on her face. "How did you find my parents?" she said. "Very nice parents," I replied calmly. "It is not like that." But Linda retorted with a look that said she meant something else. "My parents run a company, so we're of a different class. They're paying for the house we'll live in the most upscale neighborhood around here, you see," she boasted proudly. I knew from Anthony that her parents were building them a new house. Still, I wasn't pleased with her condescending look. I couldn't help but respond in kind. "It seems so. I'll also contribute financially as much as I can." She snorted and smirked again. "You don't have to strain yourself. You're not working, so you couldn't possibly afford it, right?" Linda had a way of being offensive with her words. I wanted to reply, but she left the restroom and went to Anthony, who was waiting outside, with a flattering voice. Seeing Anthony smile happily, I realized I couldn't disturb his happiness, having found it so late in life. So, I chose to stay silent, thinking Linda probably just disliked me, potentially her future mother-in-law. If you are truly in love, Anthony, things will work out. That's what I believed, so I decided not to interfere with their marriage and to keep my distance from the newlyweds. However, as soon as their married life began, the troubles started. Linda, who was clueless about everything, would call my mobile phone first thing in the morning, not knowing how to use the washing machine. Despite explaining over the phone, she couldn't grasp it, so I had no choice but to rush over to her place. "Rebecca, you came. Can you please do the laundry right away?" Although I only came to explain how to use the washing machine, Linda dumped all the laundry on me, and then even demanded I clean. Linda didn't know how to use not only the washing machine but also the vacuum cleaner. Even as I tried to show her how, she just watched TV, ignoring me. When I tried to scold her, she sensed it and fled to the restroom, staying there for 30 minutes, leaving me to do the cleaning. Since then, Linda would call me over during weekdays when Anthony was not home, dumping all household chores on me without a word of thanks. In fact, she would say terrible things. "Rebecca, you're always so free, you might as well do this. It's not like you've given us any money for the house like my parents," She would say this and then leave to enjoy her social life with the ladies in the neighborhood. Moreover, she bragged to everyone that our house had a housekeeper, so she didn't have to do any housework. I was furious at her attitude. Linda, don't you think that's a bit too much? I'm here out of kindness, understanding you're struggling with unfamiliar chores. Even as I said this, her attitude remained unchanged, lounging on the living room sofa, acting high and mighty. What? Acting all important just because you're a housekeeper. If you dare tell Anthony about this, I won't let you off easily. I'll tell Anthony you've been harassing me. How twisted could she be? I regretted not opposing their marriage from the start. She would summon me and then, before Anthony returned in the evening, send me away. This routine continued daily, and I was fed up. Then one day, as usual, I received an early morning call from Linda. But today, she seemed panicked. What's wrong? You seem in a hurry. When I asked, she replied in a troubled voice. Today, I'm hosting my birthday party at our place. I was actually calling for my mom to help, but she just told me she can't make it. Come quickly. Apparently, she had planned to have her mother prepare for her birthday party. But now that she couldn't come, Linda wanted me to take over instead. Well, expecting to be called for chores anyway, I was prepared. So, I'm your mom's substitute? Got it. I'll be there shortly. Oh, wait. I haven't prepared anything for the meal. Make sure to buy some ingredients on your way, will you? Yes. Knowing Linda, the kitchen would have nothing. I bought ingredients from an early opening supermarket before heading over to help her. Linda scrutinized each item I bought, checking prices and ingredients. It's a party. I wished you had bought something nicer. Well, no choice now. Hurry up with the preparations. As usual, without thanking me for the groceries, she treated me like a housekeeper. Resigned to my fate, I began the preparations without complaining. While she didn't lift a finger to help, focusing instead on her makeup. After a while, her friends arrived at our house. Since I was still preparing the meal in the back, Linda greeted them at the door by herself. Everyone, welcome to my birthday party. I've prepared lots of delicacies, so please enjoy yourselves. Despite her attitude towards me, Linda entertained her friends with an air of celebrity, completely different from how she treated me. Listening from the back, I could hear her voice clearly. Speaking in a key 2 octaves higher than usual, almost making me laugh. As I prepared the meal, I listened to their voices. Then, I overheard a conversation that sent chills down my spine. Is the housekeeper cooking again today? Yes. She'll do anything if you ask. But don't expect much in terms of taste. She's a terrible housekeeper. Hearing Linda's words, her friends all laughed. I knew she was telling her friends I was the housekeeper, but to call me a terrible one was too much. Despite doing all the chores without complaint, this was unfair treatment. Linda, getting carried away, continued to badmouth me. Really, our housekeeper is so sloppy with cleaning, and she doesn't even make the laundry fluffy. She's the worst. Then why not get a new housekeeper? I can introduce you to a good one. No, thank you. Our household isn't as wealthy as yours. We can barely afford our current bottom-of-the-barrel housekeeper. Listening to this ridiculous exchange was truly absurd. Yet, hearing her speak ill of me so casually made me want to confront her. As Linda finished talking with her friends, she entered the kitchen and addressed me in the most arrogant tone imaginable. Hey, housekeeper! I've invited my celebrity friends over, so entertain them. I thought about how to respond to her. With guests already here, arguing wasn't an option. Despite my anger reaching its peak, I replied with a smile. I understand. You're lucky to have such refined friends. Linda, perhaps taken aback by my response, stood with her mouth open. She probably expected me to retaliate in some way. Ignoring that, I carried the prepared meal to the living room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am Rebecca, the housekeeper. I said this with a smile as I entered, but I was surprised by the celebrities' reactions. And it wasn't just me who was surprised. The celebrities who saw me also started murmuring among themselves. Then, one of them confronted her. Why is she the one doing this? I can't believe she's a housekeeper. Linda, what's going on? When one of celebrity questioned her, the others looked at her with skepticism. Linda stood frozen, looking as if she had been deceived. Huh? What? What's everyone's problem? The celebs ignored Linda's question and turned their attention to me. It's been a long time, Professor Rebecca. Everyone, it's been a while. I never imagined we'd meet like this. Despite having such a terrible daughter-in-law, I suppose I should be thankful. I said this to them, making it clear I was addressing Linda. Realizing I was Linda's mother-in-law, everyone glared at her. Linda, caught lying, looked uncomfortable. Linda, isn't it disrespectful to call such a wonderful mother-in-law a housekeeper? She was our professor during college. Yes. Since retiring, she has been awarded the title of Professor Emeritus, a well-respected individual in this area. Linda, weren't you aware? Hearing this from everyone, Linda was stunned and speechless. Understandably so. Until now, she thought I was just an unemployed old woman. In this high-end residential area, education has always been a priority, with numerous prestigious tutoring schools. Even daughters from good families attending state universities wasn't uncommon. Many of the young celebrity wives here today are graduates of the state university where I taught. Unlike them, Linda graduated from a private university in the city, unaware of my reputation. I apologized to my former students for the discomfort caused. Sorry, everyone. My son's wife started living in this neighborhood without knowing anything. When I said that, Linda glared at me with an expression that said, "Don't be stupid." About 3 minutes later, Anthony came home. Well, to be precise, he had been home for about 10 minutes but had quietly gone to his room. Linda, who normally wouldn't expect Anthony to be home at this time, was panicking. Anthony? Why are you home so early? Facing a jittery Linda, Anthony calmly answered. It's your birthday today, the first one since we got married. I came home early, but I didn't feel it was the right moment to come out, so I waited in the room for about 10 minutes. If you were coming home early, you should have told me in advance. Linda said, sweating nervously. Probably, Anthony intended to surprise her by coming home early. Given what was overheard, it's understandable why he didn't come out. Tentatively peering at Anthony, Linda asked, Did you hear the voices? I heard everything. Even from outside, it was clear you were calling my mother a housekeeper. Linda's face went pale upon hearing Anthony's words. Then, turning to me with a voice on the verge of tears, she asked, Rebecca, did you know he was home? Why didn't you tell me? Linda looked at me with pleading eyes, perhaps hoping for some way to deflect the situation. However, no matter how much she pleaded, I had no intention of helping. Well, I did think I heard some noise at the entrance while I was preparing the meal. But I was too busy to notice. I said so, but the truth was, I clearly knew he had come home. He had entered just as Linda was bad-mouthing me. So, I looked at Anthony and silently gestured for him to be quiet by placing a finger on my lips. That's why he quietly went into the bedroom without Linda noticing. I wondered how he felt, listening to all of Linda's insults about me alone in the room. As I feared, he seemed shocked. With a sad expression, Anthony then said to Linda, "Linda, I knew my mother was coming over to do chores almost every day. I could tell by the way things were cleaned, the way the laundry was folded, and the taste of the food." Linda, hearing this, awkwardly looked down. It seemed she was too embarrassed to make excuses now. He continued, "I'm not upset that you asked her to help with chores. I thought you were getting along with her. But to exploit her, calling her a housekeeper and then bad-mouthing her? I never thought you were that kind of person." Linda seemed to reflect on his words. However, suddenly, she lifted her head and turned towards her friends. Then, an unbelievable answer came back from Linda's mouth. "Rebecca didn't contribute financially to our house like my parents did. I thought it was because she was poor, so I told her not to bother. How sneaky to hide that she was a university professor." Linda, even now, tried to paint me as the villain. Feeling the need to correct her, I raised my voice. "No, I wasn't hiding anything." "That's right. When I introduced you to her, she had already retired. We didn't think it necessary to mention her past job. Saying she was a university professor might sound like bragging, right?" We explained. Yet, Linda was not satisfied and refused to back down. "I don't want to hear such excuses. It's as if I was made a fool of for not knowing. If I had known, I wouldn't have called her a housekeeper." Linda insisted she was embarrassed because she had been unaware. She had predetermined I was poor and had exploited me accordingly. It seemed she hadn't reflected on what Anthony had said earlier. Finally, Anthony lost his patience and raised his voice. "Linda, what does it matter if my mother wasn't a professor? Judging people by your own standards like that, you're no longer my wife. We're getting a divorce. Please leave." At the word divorce, Linda flinched momentarily but then retorted with a defiant attitude. "Fine, I understand. But since my parents built this house, Anthony, you should be the one to leave." Linda declared this, then closed the front door behind her and left. Presumably, she went back to her parents' house to complain. "Wait a second, the money for this house was..." Anthony tried to call out to the departing Linda, but it was too late. "It's okay, Anthony. She'll understand soon enough." I reassured him, and Anthony calmed down, saying, "Well, yeah." After all, the divorce seemed inevitable, so Linda would lose everything. It wouldn't take long for her to realize that. What concerned me more at that moment were my former students who had come to visit. The sudden turn of events had caused a stir. "I'm so sorry, everyone. I didn't mean for this to happen today of all days." "No, please don't worry about us. But really, she's terrible, isn't she?" "Yes, indeed. It's absolutely right that you're getting a divorce." What was supposed to be Linda's birthday party had turned into a celebration of reuniting with my celebrity former students. I took the opportunity to ask them how Linda usually spent her time with these affluent friends. As it turned out, she was indeed an outsider in their circle. Unable to keep up with the celebrities, she nevertheless tried hard to fit in, clinging to anyone she could. Everyone expressed their displeasure at how I, their former teacher, had been mistreated by Linda. They wanted to do more than just let the divorce happen. They wanted to make her panic and regret her actions. "Everyone, I appreciate your feelings, but there's no need for that now. Linda will soon face enough consequences for her actions. She'll understand that before long." I said to everyone and enjoyed the evening chatting with my former students over the meal I had prepared. Just when we were about to call it a day, Linda returned, crying. She must have been shocked after learning the truth. Why did it have to happen like this? Oh? So you went back to your parents' house, didn't you? I addressed her, and Linda glared at me sharply. You brat knew and kept quiet about it, didn't you? Hey! What do you mean brat when speaking to her? Because she never tells me anything. She's just a coward. She yelled, then burst into tears. Linda's father had recently declared bankruptcy, struggling to pay his employees and taking on debt. When her parents came to me, they were distressed because they had promised to finance their daughter's marital home but now had to allocate those funds to pay off debts. When I went back home, my parents were preparing to move. They had to sell the house because of the debts. You knew about this and didn't tell me. Linda sobbed as she said this. I replied in a gentle tone to calm her down. Your parents didn't want you to worry about them, which is why they asked me to keep quiet. And as for the payments for this house, you ended up covering them, didn't you? So, doesn't that mean I'm the one who should leave? Realizing she was at a disadvantage, Linda looked down, avoiding my gaze. Anthony placed a hand on Linda's shoulder and said, Linda, it's time to apologize for everything you've said to her. Even if we can't continue together, we'll make sure you're taken care of after the divorce. Although Anthony spoke these words, Linda sulked and replied, Why should I be the one to apologize? I've been deceived by her all this time, unaware of my parents' plight, and now I've lost my family home. I'm the one who deserves an apology. The room became noisy at her outburst. I had been treating Linda with kindness out of pity, but my patience had run out. Don't you understand? Your parents didn't want to burden you, so when they asked me to help with the house payments, they pleaded, please take care of Linda. Yet, you've been completely unaware of their concerns, only focusing on your own feelings. When I conveyed the feelings of her parents to Linda, she had nothing to retort. Following that, Anthony also spoke. Well, regardless, I've decided to divorce Linda. I'll get the divorce papers tomorrow, so please sign them. For now, pack your belongings tonight and leave by tomorrow. What? You can't just tell me to leave suddenly like that. It's impossible. Linda blurted out as if in a panic. It was because even considering moving in with her parents at their new place, the apartment was only big enough for a couple to live in. Linda, with a troubled look, glanced around. She seemed to be thinking of getting help from her wealthy friends, but not a single one paid her any attention. Sorry, but Linda is no longer one of us. That's right. You're not rich or anything anymore, just another person struggling. As they said this, the celebs took turns berating Linda. They were thinking of me and had just talked about wanting to surprise and fluster her. They wanted to make Linda startle and panic. I guess that's what they're doing. She was biting her lip, her head bowed in silence. It seemed she had come to realize that she had lost not just her family, but also the friends she trusted. Then, the next morning, Anthony went to get the divorce papers and signed them. Linda seemed hesitant, unable to sign for a while. She was probably worried about being kicked out without anywhere to go. Holding the pen, her hand trembling, she finally burst into tears. Sorry, I won't boss Rebecca around anymore. I won't ever call you a housekeeper again. Please forgive me. Looking closely at Linda's crying face, there wasn't a single tear. She must have suddenly become afraid of leaving and started fake crying. Anthony and I, showing an expression that we were not falling for it, blamed her. It's pointless to say such things now. Who would fall for that kind of crying? That's right. Instead of wasting time crying, you should seriously think about what to do next. Perhaps thinking she had no other options, she resignedly signed the divorce papers. And then, carrying her packed belongings, she left the house. Suddenly, I noticed Anthony had tears in his eyes. For him, it had been happiness he had finally found. Yet, he decided to divorce for my sake, which pained my heart. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder. "Are you sure this was the right thing to do?" When I asked, Anthony, who had been drooping his shoulders, turned around and showed a smile. "I'm too old to be this pathetic, huh?" Fell for a young woman after her money really shows I had no eye for people. His smile seemed so lonely. What should I say to him at a time like this? He had always been a dutiful son. Maybe that's why he made such a sacrifice this time. "Anthony, thank you so much. You're not pathetic at all. You're kind and live for others, even at your own expense. Surely, a good person will come along someday." That's right. If you believe, a good connection is bound to come. When I shared my thoughts, Anthony also smiled and said, "Yeah, you're right." And Linda, after all, had moved into her parents' cramped apartment. Her parents, despite my being her mother-in-law, had asked me to take care of Linda but lamented that she was driven out due to her selfishness. Linda's parents had truly trusted me. So thinking it wasn't right, they brought her to my place. But without inviting her in, I told them at the entrance. What happens in a marriage is the couple's issue. Anthony is trying his best to move forward positively. So, it's best for the parents not to interfere in their divorce. To my opinion, the parents nodded in agreement, saying, "Yes, yes." Linda showed an attitude towards her parents. "That's what I said, right?" It was pointless to come. That day, having convinced them, I sent them back home at once. However, afterwards, Linda constantly argued with her parents. The parents kept saying it was her fault the marriage failed, even though she had married a good person. But she still insisted that the bad one was me, the lying mother-in-law. Since then, the relationship between Linda and her parents remained tense. Years later, unable to bear it anymore, Linda ran away from home and came to Anthony. She begged for reconciliation, but there was no way Anthony would consider it now. Watching his cold behavior, she lashed out at him. "What about you anyway? I just wanted to be a housewife with a high-earning husband. But Anthony, being just an associate professor with an $80,000 salary, is such a mediocre amount. All my friends' husbands earn over $100,000, so I really felt inferior back then." What? What are you trying to say? That's why you'll never be able to remarry in your life. Originally not popular with women, and with such an average income, even gold diggers won't come near you. At her words, he burst into laughter. Not just Anthony, but I, listening in the back, and another family member laughed out loud. "Who did you say can't remarry?" Hear that unfamiliar female laughter from the back? That's my wife. Huh? Yes, currently living in this house is Anthony's newly remarried wife. I happened to be visiting, so I listened to the conversation between Anthony and Linda along with them. By the way, Anthony has become a professor at his university in an exceptionally quick rise. Linda showed a surprised look when Anthony told her this. "So, that means high income, right? And I thought you would still be single because you don't seem to have any luck with women." "Me? So, you went to several other men? And since no one was interested, you thought I'd still be available?" It seemed Anthony hit the nail on the head. With a look of disappointment, Linda silently left the scene. I'm still in touch with her parents, so I know that Linda has been into singles mixers again since the divorce. However, it seems no man is interested in her, who is not so young anymore. She must have thought Anthony was still single and hoped for a reconciliation. But with her as she is now, I think she'll have to live alone from here on. Even her parents say they've given up on her. Afterwards, according to the parents, Linda moved into the house of an elderly man living alone. Apparently, it was for his money, but soon after moving in, he required care. The elderly man, not wanting to enter a facility, asked her to take care of him. With nowhere else to go, Linda has resigned herself and is now struggling with the unfamiliar task of caregiving. And our house is enjoying happy days since Anthony remarried. Anthony says he learned a lot from his failed marriage. Having broadened his perspective and increased his interactions with people, Anthony became close with a woman of his age who works as a lecturer at the same workplace. She also had a history of divorce, and they hit it off. After a year of dating, he remarried. The new wife, a very nice person, said to me, "Let's live together." However, as much as she offered, I kindly declined. Actually, I received a call from the university I worked at, asking me to come back. Returning to work means living with my son and his wife would be inconvenient in many ways. So, I've decided to continue living freely on my own. At the university, I've interacted with many students. They study various fields and then go out into society. I love being part of such educational environments. Among the affluent students I've met again, some now have children. They've requested this of me. It's great you've returned as a professor. We hope our children can also be under your care, so please stay healthy and continue teaching until then. Waiting until those children turn 18 will take another 14 to 15 years. Yet, I've sworn to fulfill that promise. As long as my body allows, I want to keep watching over as many students as possible. That's my greatest joy as a university professor.